when manifesting your soul's work, your purpose, your vision, your calling. These are really important notes. Okay, so I'm going to start tagging everybody in these live streams. How do I do that? I think there's a tag at everybody. Okay, there isn't a way to do that. I want to actually tag you guys so that you know when I'm going live. I don't know how to do that, so if you guys could set notifications, then you'll know when I'm going live and you can hop on here. Maybe you've already done it. Hello to those of you who are watching, because I would love you guys to be able to join live. For the meantime, I'm actually going to put some of these live streams onto YouTube as well. So if you're watching on YouTube later on, you can join this group via the link in the comments, and then you can also see them live. Not every live stream is going to make it to YouTube, just these couple in this next week or 2 weeks when I feel inspired. Okay, when manifesting your soul's work, your vision, your calling, your purpose. Now, this information comes from multiple years of experience with myself and with working with other people. Not only just with this type of work, which is more spiritually focused, transformationally focused. Also, I had another physical business, which was a school, was slightly alternative education. It was called the Learning Space. I had that a couple of years ago, back around, I think it was about 7 years ago now that began. 8. And so this information is a culmination of everything that I have. Well, not everything, but I'm going to try to add quite a lot into it. This information is a culmination from these years. So I would hope that this information is going to save you a lot of suffering, pain, pitfalls, and setbacks along your journey. Okay, so first I want to talk a little bit about the common pitfalls that spiritually orientated beings fall into when it comes to manifesting and creating the work that they want to create. Okay, number one is that there can often be an expectation that it will all just happen in a seamless, synchronistic flow. And yes, it will in some ways. However, that perspective that we've been speaking about in some of these other videos recently about cultivating receptivity, presence, spaciousness, openness, and being available to hear it, to feel it, to let it come out from within you. This is important. But if you just try to approach building and creating and bringing a whole vision to life from that perspective, you will actually be missing a certain structure and a form that you actually need in order to give that energy space and to hold that energy and to support it to come into manifestation. And I did touch a little bit on that in a previous video, but it is very important to note that that energy, your calling, your essence, the energy that is your purpose, the energetics of it are not going to be the whole picture. You do need to also have some type of form, some type of structure, some type of vehicle to hold your purpose, your calling, or your soul's work in. And that is one of the biggest pitfalls that hold people back in the beginning when it comes to actually getting something out there, is because they recognize there is this abundance of essence, but the way to create it in a form isn't exactly that obvious to them. And it may actually be easy for other people. For me, when I went into this more spiritually orientated work, more directly focused on transformation, I was very cold to coaching. And that to me was my craft, my vehicle, my form, my architecture to give a way for the energy of the work to come out through me. So that was a very clear calling. Some people are called to teach or to a particular type of healing modality, yoga or massage or whatever it is, and that for you is your vehicle for your calling. Now, what often happens is that after a couple of years of gaining mastery in your craft and establishing yourself, you may actually start to recognize that your way of working is distinct from that craft, and you actually start to see it through contrast of the craft. And the craft itself actually, it really is just a gateway for people to receive more of the the unique way of working that you have, and also it gives you opportunity to start to recognize your unique way of working. For me, I saw within maybe a year or even 6 months of coaching my own unique way of working starting to emerge. And then over the years of working one to one with people and having coaching as the vehicle, this started to it started to just be obvious that that was just the invitation in. I had my own unique way of working and operating with people, but that didn't just come overnight. That came from quite a lot of years of studying different modalities, different methods, different types of facilitation, different ways in which people transform and receive information and learn and grow and expand. So it had a lot of additional input in order to, I had a lot of input in order to help me recognize and shape what I'm here to do. And I do feel that if you are called to be of service and you're called to share your purpose, your vision, your gifts, it is important that you tune into the form, the craft, the structure of it, because that is very, very important. It isn't about the vehicle itself, but you do need to make sure that you have a solid starting vehicle and you create something is that does have a degree of tangibility and does have a degree of anchoredness in this physical reality. And that is a way that people can really struggle while spiritually focused beings, is that they find it difficult to tangibly express and articulate and ground what it is that they do in physical terms and in the physical world. And I totally get that struggle, guys. And I totally understand the frustrations that can come. And there can also be a degree of resistance to explaining it in material ways and to explaining what this actually is, because it is magical, it is spontaneous, it is intuitive. However, spiritual talents and spiritual gifts do have an impact in the tangible physical reality. And although it is not about the tangible impact, there is still a way to recognize them in the tangible world. So it may be difficult to explain it, but there will be a way. And it is important, as that is a process of helping it become more grounded and helping it become more accessible to other people. And you will probably have a degree of difficulty or resistance in doing this. And that is part of you becoming shaped and you becoming sculpted by your work. It is not just about you creating your work, it's about your work creating you. You becoming sculpted and the vision and the energy of what you're here to create actually shaping you from the inside out. The vision itself is, in a lot of ways, like the vision that you're called to create, it will be its own consciousness, its own beingness. And you are in communication and in relationship with each other. And it has chosen you because you are a suitable vessel for it. However, it will have standards of you. It will require that you embody a certain level of discipline and focus and dedication to it. And this is another pitfall that can often happen, is that those who are more prone to the surrender to the flow and let the divine transmission come through me, there can be sometimes too much of a dependence on that and too much of an expectation that that only feels a certain way. And as a result, there sometimes will not be the recognition of the calling to embody a certain type of discipline and focus and anchoredness in your ability to be the channel and to be the vessel, because there does require a certain amount of discipline to hold yourself to be that channel. And it isn't always easy, it isn't always spontaneous, it isn't always just go with the flow, it doesn't always just hit you. Sometimes you do have to carve out that space to be in that spaciousness and in that presence and available for the messages that want to come through you and the direction that wants to happen. So it's a very common expectation that can be had, and there's a lot of also insecurity and doubt and fear that can hide behind that type of that type of preference towards it coming through in a seamless inspiration just struck me type of way. And don't get me wrong, guys, there can be phases when you are completely in that and completely surrendered and it is a free flow. However, it's not the norm, and it's not the sorry, it's not helpful to expect it to be the norm and the baseline. You should actually expect that sometimes it might be crunchy, sometimes it might be difficult, sometimes there might be pitfalls, but you've got to stay sensitive to that and to make sure that you are being available for it, you're being truly receptive, and that you aren't attached to it coming through in a certain way. Let me just think about that one for a moment more. That really is just a balancing perspective on what I was sharing a lot recently. And helpful way to balance that is to ensure that you are very clear on your intention. What is your intention? And the intention, in a lot of ways, acts as a type of magnetic field to draw to you the energy of the transmission, the message, the actions that the vision's going to take. Oh, yeah, so this really is why it's actually not enough to just rely on it always coming through and moving through and happening spontaneously, because that actually responds as well to your intention and towards your will and your availability. And when you're holding strong intentions to serve, holding strong intentions to be available, yes, that actually draws to you more inspiration, more action, more direction. But if you do not have that foundation of a strong intention, then you can often find yourself directionless and meandering, and also not fully grounding and not fully anchoring your work and the vision that you're here to create in a tangible form. It can end up just being a little bit separate from this reality, and maybe that is actually fine for a certain amount of time in it. And I do recognize that that's a pathway that a lot of people take, is that their work is relatively intangible and not necessarily the most understandable in the early phases, but then it starts to become more clear and it starts to become more tangible. The or it's not even that it starts to become, it starts to demand from you that it becomes more clear and more tangible as it starts to develop a greater foundation in the world. And as your work and your vision demands from you that it is more clear and more tangible, this is happening because there's going to be a greater calling to that work, and it actually needs to have a stronger foundation in the world. And this is the part that I do notice that people really, really struggle with. And I have struggled with that. I have found that incredibly difficult. And it is the part that really demands the the person like me, like us, to really ground way more of their energy into the physicality and lean into the ways of the physical world and the forms that we may judge or we may label as not really spiritual, or we're not really into it, aka business, aka money, aka having real world impact, whatever, because we're so beyond the world. However, I do believe that the evolution in consciousness isn't just all about us all becoming super spiritual and super evolved and then there's a completely new earth here. It is going to happen through each and every one of us anchoring more and more of our true energy here and going through that very difficult process of excavating the depths, facing our resistances, and recognizing that everything in reality is actually empty from the judgments and the projections that we put onto it. AKA business is not the same as we believe it to be because of how we have perceived business to be typically used in the world. Money is not the same as the meanings and the labels that we put onto it. These things are independent from that. So in our evolution, what we're doing is we are letting these external things evolve with us, and we are allowing them to also become carriers for spiritual energy and for our spiritual essence. So part of the evolution I feel for this earth is business and spirituality and other aspects of the real world no longer being so separate from their true spiritual essence. I do not necessarily believe that the most high timeline is for all the spiritual beings to just split off in this direction and see a real world. I do believe that it is about the unification of these different aspects of how humanity expresses these different aspects of life, now becoming available to express the true essence of their energy. I really, really feel this, and this is true unity consciousness. This is the evolutionary direction that we are all headed in. So, back to the manifestation of your work and your vision, it may actually ask you to be more devoted and more serious to an idea of something that is called business or money, and develop greater foundations, um, because this is you unifying that spiritual energy more into the collective, more into the everyday reality. And this can be very, very hard for the light worker, for the spiritually orientated one, for those on the path of awakening, because you actually had to turn yourself away from the typical world in order to go further towards developing your consciousness and expanding yourself and gaining spiritual mass. And now you come back around and you bring that energy that you've achieved when you turned away from that stuff, and you merge it back in with the way that things are. So it is part of it to come into that full circle. And the more that we can recognize that the world and the external aspects of it are free to take on the energy that we choose to create them with, the more we can lean into them, and the less we can judge, and the less we can say, well, this isn't very spiritual, and maybe we're actually not saying that, but we are unconsciously feeling it, and we're unconsciously putting ourselves above it, and we're unconsciously keeping ourselves separate. Now, it is until you have a certain type of commitment to your work in the form of a business or in the form of something that is tangible and grounded and real, and you're not just focusing on the delivery of the essence, which, by the way, is a totally beautiful thing to do, and I really recommend to do it and commit to that, and that is far greater than not doing that. But at a certain point, there will be a call to go into greater responsibility, and if you are too attached to your views of these things about the world, then you may fail to recognize where you're actually being called to take greater responsibility and take greater ownership in order to have greater service. Having greater service is about letting go of your attachment to how it needs to look and how it needs to be, and becoming open to what it is calling from you and what it is asking you to become. Because ultimately, it isn't about you. Your work, your vision, your service is not about you. It comes through you. You enable it, you support it. However, it is about the people that you serve and the change that you make in the world and in the collective, and the impact that you are here to have. And that is going to be one hell of an ego purification trip for you. And it may hurt a lot, but you will need to probably dismantle your spiritual identity and loads of other aspects of your identity on it. And that, I think, is one of the very big pitfalls as well, is that the seeker and the spiritual one doesn't actually recognize that they will need to dismantle as well their spiritual identity as they lean more into service, and they lean more into taking responsibility for making tangible, real world change and impact, and actually doing what it takes to serve people, and doing what it takes to bring authentic and real liberation and transformation to other people. Now, another point as well is that before you really take ownership for making it tangible and real and bridge to the world, it's easy to kind of float around in this non-specific space where you never really directly say what you're about or what it's about, but it is just sort of dependent on the intuitive way of it. But there will be a part of you that likes to hide behind that is actually uncomfortable for taking ownership for your truest power and claiming and really saying, yes, I am this. Yes, I can deliver those results. Yes, I can make that difference. And that part of you will be invited at a certain point to grow beyond just hiding behind the spiritual identity, the spiritual idea, the spiritual notions of it all, and recognize that your spiritual talents, your transformative gifts, they have a real world impact. They can change the physicality. They can really have a profound change on this physical world, and they do have tangible real world value. They don't just have value in the spiritual world and in the spiritual collective. This is required and called from you by the general collective, from the world, and the energy on this planet wants to evolve, and it will call you into action. And you have got what it takes. You've got it within you. You're probably already sharing it, and it's important that you answer the calls. And the things I've mentioned in this video, if applied, can actually take a couple of years of your journey, or at least some difficulty or hurdles that you hit. Okay, so that those, in my experience, are some of the pitfalls that I have seen. And I also feel very strongly that it is a time of change, and that many of the light workers, the spiritual collective, the people that I serve and that I have worked with, are now recognizing that it's time to go beyond just focusing on your own spiritual journey, and it is time to dedicate to service, dedicate to creation, dedicate to making a real impact, and dedicate to service, and dedicate to being available. Okay, guys, thank you all for watching, and I'm sending you so much love. Bye.